The forest was silent. Only the sound of the wind moved through the tall black trees. The human traveler walked carefully, his boots pressing against the wet ground. He had been on this strange planet for 3 days, searching for water and food. But tonight he saw something different, something that did not belong. Far away, a thin line of smoke rose into the sky. It was not natural. It looked like fire, like something had burned. His heart began to beat faster. Smoke could mean danger. Smoke could also mean people, or survivors. He moved slowly, step by step, his hand resting on the old blade at his side. The forest grew darker as he got closer. He smelled something sharp in the air, metal, fire, and ash. And then he saw it. A ship. It was half buried in the ground, broken and burned. The outside was twisted, glowing faintly with heat. The traveler stopped and stared. He had seen ships before, but this one was not human. The design was strange, the marks on the side written in a language he did not know. He walked closer, careful not to step on the sharp metal pieces scattered across the ground. The ship looked as if it had fallen from the sky and crashed with great force. Trees around it were blackened, leaves turned to ash. The traveler paused. Was anyone alive inside? Or had the fire taken them all? He listened. At first, nothing. Only the crackle of dying flames. Then, a sound. A cry. It was soft, but it cut through the silence. A cry of pain, or fear, or maybe a baby. The traveler's breath caught. He stepped closer, his eyes searching the shadows inside the broken ship. The entrance was torn open. He ducked under the sharp edge and entered. Smoke filled the air and his eyes burned, but he pushed forward. Inside, the ship was a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered glass. He moved through the darkness, following the sound. Again the cry came, weak, desperate. And then he saw them. A woman. Alien. She sat against the wall of the ship, her body covered in burns and bruises. Her skin was pale, her eyes large and glowing faintly blue, unlike any human he had seen. In her arms, wrapped in torn cloth, was a small child, an alien baby. The baby's tiny hands waved weakly, its voice crying for life. The traveler froze. For a moment, fear touched him. She was not human. He had heard stories about aliens, some dangerous, some cruel. But the way she looked at him was not with anger. It was with fear and hope. Her lips moved, speaking words in a language he could not understand. But he understood her eyes. She was begging him not to leave, begging him to help. He stepped closer, slowly raising his hands to show he meant no harm. The baby's cries grew louder, filling the broken ship with echoes of life. The woman held the child tighter as if afraid he would take it away. He knelt down, his voice soft. "I won't hurt you." She tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she watched his face carefully. He pointed at the baby, then at himself, then placed a hand on his chest. Slowly he nodded, trying to say, "Let me help." Her hand shook. For a long moment she did not move, but then with great effort she lowered the cloth just enough to show the baby's face. The child was weak, breathing hard, its small body trembling. The traveler felt something deep inside him. He had seen death, he had seen war, but this was different. A mother, broken and alone. A baby too small to survive without help. He reached into his pack and pulled out a flask of water. He poured a little onto his hand and offered it. The alien woman hesitated, then touched her lips to his hand. Drinking the drops, she gave a little to the baby, letting the water touch its lips. The child calmed, its cries softening. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the traveler again, and this time, her voice was softer. She spoke one word, slowly, carefully. Help, he understood. The traveler looked around. The ship was broken, unsafe. The smoke and heat meant it could collapse any moment. He knew they could not stay here. He pointed toward the forest, then back at her. She shook her head weakly, fear in her eyes, but he held out his hand. For a long moment nothing moved, then slowly, painfully, she reached out her hand and touched his. Her skin was cold, trembling. He nodded firmly. "I'll get you out." The baby made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. The traveler carefully lifted the alien woman into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile. The baby was still in her arms, pressed against her chest. As he carried them out of the burned ship, the wind blew ash into the air, making the scene look like a graveyard of fire. Behind him, the wreck groaned, a deep sound as if the ship itself was crying. He stepped into the forest, holding them close. His eyes scanned the shadows, his ears sharp for any sound. The danger was not over. Something had burned that ship, and maybe whoever did it was still near. The night was cold, the path dark, but he walked on. Behind him, the burned ship slowly collapsed, flames hissing as the forest swallowed the wreck. Ahead, in the silence of the dark woods, a new story began. The story of a human, an alien widow, and her child. And somewhere in the distance, something else watched, waiting. The forest was dark and heavy with silence. The human carried the alien woman and her baby in his arms, moving quickly away from the burning ship. Every step crunched against broken branches and wet leaves. His ears stayed sharp, listening for danger. The night felt alive, as if unseen eyes were watching. The woman trembled in his arms. She whispered words he could not understand, her voice weak and full of fear. The baby gave soft, tired cries, its breath uneven. The traveler felt the weight of their lives pressing on him. He had not asked for this. He had not planned to save anyone. But now fate had placed them in his hands. Behind them, the burned ship gave one last groan and collapsed. A shower of sparks flew into the night sky. The human stopped and turned his head. The flames were dying, but the smoke rose high like a beacon. Anyone nearby would see it. Anyone searching for survivors would come. He clenched his jaw. That meant he did not have much time. He carried them deeper into the woods until he found a small clearing. A fallen log lay on the ground, and he set the alien mother gently against it. She looked pale, her chest rising slowly, but her glowing, blue eyes never left her child. She pulled the baby close, whispering soft sounds to calm it. The human knelt in front of her. "We can't stay here." He pointed back toward the smoke, then pointed into the deeper forest. "Danger. We must move." She blinked, not understanding his words, but she seemed to feel the meaning. Her gaze shifted toward the trees, and fear filled her face. She shook her head and spoke quickly in her own language. Her voice carried worry and warning. The human listened carefully. He could not understand the words, but he could feel her fear. Something out there scared her more than the fire. Something was hunting her. His hand went to the blade at his side. "Are they coming?" he whispered to himself. His eyes scanned the shadows. The trees swayed gently, but the night was too still, too quiet. Then he heard it, a crack, a branch, breaking under weight. He froze. The alien woman's eyes widened. She had heard it too. The baby gave a small cry, the sound sharp in the silence. The human placed a finger to his lips, signaling for silence, though he knew the child could not understand. The sound came again, closer this time. Footsteps, careful, slow, but heavy. The traveler's heartbeat quickened. He looked down at the alien woman. She was staring into the darkness, whispering something under her breath. He saw her clutch a small pendant around her neck. Was she praying? He stood and moved a step toward the trees. His blade was ready. The air was tense, every second stretching long. He thought about leaving. He thought about running into the night alone. It would be easy. He could survive on his own. But his eyes fell on the baby. Tiny, fragile, helpless. Its small hand gripped its mother's torn cloth. Without him, they had no chance. The traveler clenched his jaw. This was his choice. He could walk away and let fate decide their end, or he could stand and protect them, even if it cost his own. How he made his choice. He knelt by the woman again, pointing to her and the child. He tapped his chest, then held up his blade. His voice was calm but firm. "I will protect you." She stared at him, tears in her glowing eyes. Maybe she did not understand his words, but she understood his heart. Her lips moved, whispering, the word she had used before. Help. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The human pulled the woman gently to her feet. She was weak, her body trembling, but she leaned on him, still holding the baby close. He guided them slowly into the shadows of the trees. The forest around them grew darker. The wind whispered through the branches. The footsteps followed. Whoever, or whatever was out there was hunting them. The human's eyes narrowed. If they kept moving, they might escape. But if the hunters were faster, they would be caught. He needed a plan. He needed to decide. Fight now or run deeper into the unknown. A sudden cry echoed in the distance. It was not human. It was sharp, high-pitched, and full of hunger. The alien woman froze, her grip on the baby tightening. The traveler had never heard such a sound before, but he understood one thing. It was a predator's call. He pulled her closer, whispering low. "Quiet. Stay close." They moved through the darkness, stepping carefully, every sound of their movement loud in his ears. The baby whimpered, and he prayed it would not cry louder. Then, in the corner of his vision, he saw movement. 2 glowing shapes among the trees. Eyes. Watching. The traveler stopped, his body tensed, his blade firm in his hand. The alien woman pressed against him, shaking with fear. The baby let out a small cry, and the glowing eyes shifted toward them. The traveler's heart pounded. He stood tall, placing himself between the danger and the family he had chosen to protect. He raised his blade, ready to fight. The forest went silent for a single breath. Then from the shadows the eyes moved closer, and the hunter stepped into the light. The glowing eyes came closer. The human tightened his grip on the blade, his body tense and ready. Behind him, the alien widow clutched her baby, holding it, close against her chest. The night air grew colder and the forest seemed to hold its breath. From the shadows, a creature stepped forward. It was tall, hunched, and covered in dark scales that shimmered faintly under the pale moonlight. Its mouth stretched wide, showing sharp, jagged teeth. The glowing eyes locked onto the small bundle in the woman's arms. The baby gave a weak cry, and the creature hissed, its hunger revealed. The human stepped in front of them, raising his blade. His heart pounded, but his eyes stayed sharp. He had fought beasts before, but this one was different, faster, stronger, smarter. He could feel it. The creature growled and took another step forward. Then another sound came, a low growl from the trees on the other side. The human turned his head and saw 2 more glowing eyes appear in the darkness. His chest tightened. There was not just one. There were at least 2. The alien woman gasped, clutching her child tighter. She whispered words he could not understand, but her fear told the story well enough. The traveler made a quick decision. Fighting here would mean death. They had to move. He turned to her, speaking firmly. "Run." He pointed toward the deeper forest, then back at himself. He made the motion again, stronger. "Run." She hesitated, her body frozen by fear. But when the first creature hissed and lunged forward a step, she obeyed. She gripped the baby tight and stumbled into the trees. The human moved backward slowly, keeping his blade between himself and the hunters. The creatures stalked closer, their movements smooth and deadly. Their glowing eyes followed the mother and child. The traveler knew if he did not distract them, they would catch her. So he made noise. He slammed the blade against a broken branch, sending a sharp sound into the air. The creatures turned their heads toward him. He took another step back, raising his voice in a loud, angry shout. Come on! The sound echoed through the forest. One of the creatures snarled and lunged at him. The human dodged to the side, his blade flashing. The metal sliced across its scales, and the creature shrieked. Black blood sprayed against the ground. The second creature rushed forward, but the human didn't stay to fight. He ran. Branches whipped against his face as he dashed through the trees. His boots slammed against the earth, his breath sharp in his chest. Behind him, the hunters roared, their steps fast and powerful. They were chasing him. Good. That gave the woman and her child more time. He ran until his lungs burned, then dove behind a fallen tree. He crouched low, holding his breath. The glowing eyes passed by in the distance, searching, hunting. One creature sniffed the air, its head turning slowly. The human gripped his blade tighter. If they found him, he would fight to the last breath. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the hunters moved farther into the woods, their growls fading into the night. The traveler exhaled slowly. He stood, his legs shaking from exhaustion, and listened carefully. Silence. Now he had to find the woman and her child. He moved quietly, following the faint sound of the baby's cries. After some time, he found them hiding in a small hollow beneath the roots of a massive tree. The woman's glowing eyes looked at him with relief. She reached out a trembling hand as if afraid he would not return. The human knelt beside her. "It's all right. I'm here." She could not understand his words, but she understood his voice. She touched her chest and whispered softly, as though thanking him. The baby stirred, weak and tired, but alive. The traveler touched the child's head gently. His heart softened. For years he had walked alone, never caring about anyone but himself. But now, something inside him had changed. He could not abandon them. Not now. Not ever. Suddenly, a howl echoed in the distance. It was long, sharp, and closer than before. The hunters were not gone. They were circling back. The human's eyes narrowed. They had to keep moving. He pointed to the woman, then toward the deeper forest. "We go. Now." She nodded weakly. She stood with his help, holding her baby close. Together they moved through the shadows of the trees. The night was endless, every sound making their hearts race. Then the baby began to cry again. The sound echoed sharp and loud in the stillness. The woman tried to calm the child, rocking it gently, whispering soft words. But the cries grew louder. The human's stomach dropped. He knew what that meant. In the distance, glowing eyes appeared again. One pair. Then another. Then more. The hunters had heard. The traveler pulled the woman behind a cluster of rocks, crouching, low. He looked at her, his voice low and firm. "Quiet. Stay hidden." She nodded, tears on her cheeks, holding the baby close. The human gripped his blade, his eyes locked on the glowing figures moving closer through the night. He took a deep breath. He knew he could not fight them all. But he also knew one thing. He would not let the widow or her child fall tonight. The forest grew darker, the hunters drawing near. And then, glowing eyes surrounded them. The night closed in around them. Dozens of glowing eyes flickered through the dark trees, circling like fireflies of death. The human stood in front, blade tight in his hand, while the alien widow crouched low behind the rocks, clutching her baby against her chest. The hunters hissed, their voices sharp like knives scraping stone. One creature stepped forward, its teeth dripping with saliva. The human's chest tightened. He knew they had nowhere to run. It was fight or die. He raised his blade and shouted, his voice echoing in the forest. The creatures answered with snarls. Then, like arrows released from a bow, they attacked. The first beast lunged straight at him. The human sidestepped, swinging his blade across its neck. Black blood splashed onto the ground, and the creature crashed against a tree with a scream. But another leapt from the side. The human barely ducked in time. Claws ripped across his shoulder, burning with pain. He rolled on the ground, sprang to his feet, and stabbed upward. The blade sank deep into the creature's chest. It thrashed, howling, before collapsing with a heavy thud. The widow gasped behind the rocks, her arms tightening around her child. Her lips moved quickly, whispering something that sounded like a prayer. But there was no time for prayer. More hunters came. Their glowing eyes swarmed closer, moving like shadows of death. The human's breath came fast. He gritted his teeth and fought like a man possessed. His blade flashed again and again, each strike fueled by pure will. He slashed at a beast's leg, kicked another in the chest, dodged sharp claws that tore the air around him. But they were too many. One creature circled past him and leapt at the widow. She screamed, shielding her baby with her body. At the last second, the human threw himself forward, tackling the beast to the ground. They rolled across the dirt, claws ripping, teeth snapping. The human jammed his blade into its jaw, twisting, hard until the beast went still. He pushed it off, chest heaving, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. He turned back and saw the widow staring at him with wide, glowing eyes. She whispered one word again. Help. That single word lit fire in his heart. He would not let them die. The hunters growled, circling tighter now. Their numbers pressed in, glowing eyes from every direction. The human backed against the rocks, placing himself between the creatures and the family. He raised his blade again, but his arms trembled. His wounds burned, his breath was heavy. He could not fight them all. And then, something strange happened. The widow closed her eyes, clutching her child with one arm, while her free hand glowed faintly blue. A shimmer of light spread from her palm, faint but real, like a soft shield forming around her. The creatures hissed and backed away, their eyes narrowing. The human blinked in shock. She was weak, injured, yet still had power. Not enough to kill the beasts, but enough to slow them. Hold on, the human muttered. He raised his blade once more, taking the chance her shield gave him. Another creature rushed forward, claws out. The man met it head on, driving his blade into its throat. He pulled free, spun, and slashed at another. His arms ached. His vision blurred, but he refused to fall. The widow's glow flickered, her strength fading. The hunters sensed it. They roared, pushing closer. One beast slipped through and leapt over the rocks, landing right beside her. The baby wailed, its cry sharp with fear. The widow screamed. The human turned and ran, diving toward the creature with everything he had left. He slammed into it, tackling it away from her. His blade was gone, knocked from his hand. The beast snarled, pinning him to the ground. Its teeth snapped inches from his face, hot breath burning his skin. The human grabbed a broken branch lying on the ground and rammed it into the creature's throat. The beast shrieked, thrashing before collapsing lifelessly on top of him. He shoved it off, gasping for air. His body shook with exhaustion, his shoulder bled, his muscles screamed, but he forced himself to stand. The hunters paused for a moment, their glowing eyes flickering. They had lost many, but they were still more. The human gripped his empty hands, chest heaving. His blade lay somewhere in the dirt, too far to reach. The widow looked at him, tears glowing on her cheeks. She held her baby tight and whispered something soft in her language. He did not understand the words, but he felt their meaning. She was asking him not to die. The hunters growled again, preparing to strike all at once. The human stood tall, his eyes burning with fire. He spread his arms, ready to fight barehanded, if he must. The forest went still. The air heavy. The moment stretched like an endless shadow. Then from far away, a sharp howl cut through the night. The hunters froze. Their ears twitched. Their glowing eyes turned toward the sound. Another howl followed, louder, commanding. The beasts growled in frustration. One by one they backed away into the trees, their eyes vanishing into the darkness. Within moments, the forest was empty. The human stood trembling, blood dripping from his shoulder, chest rising and falling like a drum. His blade lay in the dirt, broken. Behind the rocks, the widow held her baby close, rocking it softly. Her glowing eyes locked onto him, full of fear, and something else, something like trust. The night was silent again, but the silence was heavy, as if the forest itself knew this was only the beginning. The human took one step toward them. His legs almost gave out, but he forced a smile. "We're alive." The widow stared at him for a long time. Then she whispered a word in her broken voice, a word he finally understood. "Family." But before he could answer, another sound echoed in the distance. Boots crunching, metal clanking. Not beasts this time. Soldiers. And they were coming closer. Forest grew quiet again, but the silence did not last. From the distance came the sound of boots crunching against the ground and the metallic clank of weapons. Soldiers. The human froze, his hand instinctively reaching for his broken blade. His body still ached from the fight with the beasts, blood dripping from his shoulder, but he forced himself to stand tall. His eyes narrowed. If beasts were bad, soldiers were worse. Beasts killed for hunger. Soldiers killed for orders. The alien. Widow held her baby tightly, rocking it softly to quiet its cries. She looked at the human, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She whispered something quickly in her own language, her voice trembling. He didn't understand the words, but he understood her fear. Whoever these soldiers were, they weren't here to help. They were hunting, and she was the prey. The human crouched low beside her. "We have to move," he whispered, even though he knew she could not fully understand. He pointed to the deeper forest, then back toward the sound of marching boots. She hesitated, shaking her head. Her lips pressed into a thin line as if she carried a truth too heavy to speak. The soldiers were getting closer. The traveler grabbed her arm gently, helping her to her feet. "We go now." She leaned on him, her body weak, her child cradled, close. Together they slipped into the shadows, moving as quietly as they could. The human led her down into a narrow ravine, where the sound of water trickled faintly. The trees above bent together, covering them in a dark canopy. They stopped near a large boulder. The human pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The widow sank against the rock, holding her child close, her chest rising and falling, with shallow breaths. The soldiers' voices echoed faintly now, closer, speaking in a language strange to him but clear to her. She closed her eyes and tears slipped down her cheeks. The human leaned closer. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice low. He knew she wouldn't understand every word, but he hoped she would answer. Her glowing eyes met his. Slowly, painfully, she raised her hand and touched the pendant at her neck. It glowed faintly blue. She whispered a word, then another. This time, her voice was clearer, slower, as if she wanted him to understand. "Royal blood." The human blinked. He stared, at her confused. She touched the baby's head gently, then repeated, "Royal, last." The meaning struck him like a blade. She was not just a survivor. She was the widow of someone powerful, someone important, and the baby was not just any child. It was the last of its kind, an heir. That explained everything. The burned ship, the hunters, the soldiers. They weren't after random survivors. They were after her bloodline. They wanted to erase it. The human's stomach tightened. He looked at the widow, who now gazed at him with pleading eyes. She spoke again, struggling with his language. "They kill us. All." She clutched the baby tighter. "No. Mercy." The human swallowed hard. He understood now. She wasn't safe anywhere. Not in the forest, not in the sky, not even among her own people. Someone wanted her gone. He looked at the baby. Its small hand reached out, weak but alive, gripping his torn sleeve. Something stirred inside him again, that same feeling he'd had at the wreck. He could walk away. He could leave her and the child to their fate, but he couldn't. Not now. He knelt before her, placing a hand on his chest. His voice was steady, firm. "I'll protect you. Both of you." She looked at him, tears in her eyes, and for the first time she gave a small nod. A bond formed between them, not of words, but of trust. The soldiers' voices grew louder. Flashlights cut through the trees above, sweeping across the ground. The widow's grip tightened around her child, fear written all over her face. The human scanned the ravine. They couldn't stay hidden forever. He needed a plan. Then his eyes caught the stream of water trickling between the rocks. An idea formed. He pointed toward the stream, then to the widow and child. "Follow me." They moved into the shallow water, the cold biting at their skin. The human led them down the stream, each step careful, the sound of water covering their movements. The soldiers' lights swept over the rocks above, but they didn't see them. The stream carried them farther into the forest, away from the patrol. Finally, they stopped under a natural arch of stone. Here the water pooled, dark and quiet. The widow leaned against the wall, exhausted. The baby whimpered softly, and she whispered words of comfort. The human sat nearby, his hand gripping the broken blade. He kept watch, every nerve on edge. The night was far from safe. He turned to the widow. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why save me from the beasts? Why trust me?" She looked at him with tired eyes. Her voice was soft but clear. "Because human heart. Different." The words struck him deep. She had seen something in him, something he didn't even see in himself. He nodded slowly. "Then I won't let you down." Above them, the sound of soldiers faded for now, but the human knew they would return, and next time, they might not be so lucky. The widow looked at him one last time before closing her eyes, holding her child close. He sat awake in the shadows, keeping guard, his mind heavy with the truth he now carried. The alien widow and her baby were not just survivors. They were the last of a royal line. Protecting them meant war with whoever hunted them, and in that moment he made his choice. He would not walk away. He would stand, fight, and if needed, and die for them. But somewhere deep in the forest, a flare burst into the sky, red and bright. The soldiers had marked the area. They knew survivors were close. The night was long. The human sat awake, his broken blade resting on his knees while the alien widow and her baby slept against the stone wall. The baby's soft breaths rose and fell, tiny sounds that seemed almost fragile in the endless silence. The human's body ached from wounds, but his mind stayed sharp. He kept watch, his eyes scanning every shadow. The flare in the sky had told him one truth: the soldiers would not stop. They would search the forest until they found what they were hunting. And if he failed, the widow and child would not live to see the next sunrise. When the first light of dawn touched the forest, he finally allowed himself to rest. Only for a moment. His head dipped forward, but the sound of the baby crying pulled him awake again. The widow sat with her child, rocking it gently. She whispered soft words in her language, but her hands shook. She looked weak, pale, and exhausted. The human crouched beside her. "Hungry?" he asked softly. He reached into his pack and pulled out dried rations. Not much, but enough to share. He tore a piece and offered it to her. She looked at him, hesitant, then accepted. She ate slowly, then pressed a piece gently against the baby's lips. The child licked the food weakly, and for the first time since the wreck it gave a small sound. Not a cry, but something like a laugh. The widow's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the human and whispered a word. "Thanks." He smiled. Faintly. It was the first word she had spoken in his language without hesitation. For the rest of the morning they moved deeper into the forest. The human led, clearing a path with his blade, while the widow followed close behind carrying the baby. Every so often, she looked at him with the same quiet trust, as if each step with him was a step away from death. By midday, they reached a small clearing with sunlight breaking through the trees. A stream ran nearby, clean and fresh. The human set down his pack. Here, safe, for now. The widow lowered herself to the ground with a sigh of relief. She let the baby crawl weakly in her lap, its glowing blue eyes bright under the sun. The wee, Human knelt beside the stream, washing blood from his shoulder. The water stung, but it cleared the wound. When he turned, he found the widow watching him. She tilted her head, then touched her own shoulder, pointing at his injury. He shrugged. "I'm fine." But she shook her head. She pulled a strip of cloth from her torn dress and dipped it into the stream. Then, with careful hands, she pressed it against his wound. Her touch was gentle, almost trembling, but it carried warmth. The human froze, surprised. He had spent years surviving alone, never trusting anyone. Yet here was someone, not even human, tending to him with care. He whispered, "Why help me?" Her voice was soft. "Because you help me." Those simple words cut deeper than any wound. That night, they made a small fire hidden between rocks. The human taught her how to hold a stick over the flame, cooking the little food they had. She watched closely, repeating his actions. Her child nestled against her chest. When the baby reached out for the food, the human chuckled softly and broke off a tiny piece, offering it. The baby's glowing eyes studied him for a moment, then accepted. Its little hand gripped his finger tightly. The widow watched, and her lips curved into a faint smile. She whispered something in her own language, then tried in his. "Father." The human blinked, stunned. He shook his head quickly. "No, not me." But the baby laughed and repeated the sound in its own small voice. "Fa, there." The word echoed in his heart. For years he had walked alone with no family, no home. Yet now, in the middle of a hostile forest, a widow and her child had given him something he thought he had lost forever. Family. Still, danger was never far. That night, as they rested, the sound of distant engines hummed through the trees. The human's eyes snapped open. He crouched low, listening. The widow stirred, holding her child close. "Soldiers," he whispered. She nodded, fear clear on her face. She held out her pendant, the faint blue glow reflecting in the dark. She whispered something quickly. The human leaned closer. "Baby, heir. They kill if found." Her voice shook. "You must choose." His chest tightened. He already knew the choice. He could leave now, vanish into the night, and maybe survive alone. Or he could stay, fight for them, and risk death. But when the baby reached for him again, tiny fingers grabbing his sleeve, he felt the answer deep in his soul. He placed a hand gently over the child's. His voice was steady. "I already chose." The widow's eyes filled with tears. She whispered one word, the word she had said before. "Family." The human nodded, his jaw set. He would not let soldiers take them. He would not let anyone harm them. But even as he made that vow, the sound of boots grew louder. The soldiers were sweeping the forest, closing in. The family had little time left. The forest shook with the sound of boots. Metal clanked, voices called, and flashlights cut through the dark. Soldiers were closing in from every direction. The human stood at the edge of the small fire they had made, his jaw tight. The alien widow clutched her baby close, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She whispered something in her language, fast and desperate, then in broken human words, "They come." He nodded grimly. "I know." He checked his broken blade. It was chipped, worn, barely sharp enough to cut. Against beasts it was hard enough. Against soldiers with guns it would be almost nothing. Still, he held it tight. He would not run. The widow tugged at his sleeve, her voice soft but pleading. "Go. Leave us. Save you." Her meaning was clear. She wanted him to save himself, but the human shook his head. "No, I stay." She stared at him, tears glowing in her eyes. For a moment, words failed her. Then she whispered again, trembling. "Family." The baby whimpered, small hands reaching for him. That tiny grip on his sleeve gave him all the strength he needed. The soldiers appeared between the trees, their armor dark, their rifles shining under the moonlight. They spread out, surrounding the clearing. One of them raised a device and spoke into it. The widow's pendant glowed faintly, responding. They had tracked her bloodline. The leader stepped forward, his helmet reflecting the firelight. His voice boomed through a speaker. "Alien female, hand over the child. Now." The widow gasped and held her baby tighter. The soldier raised his weapon. "Resistance will mean death for all of you." The human stepped in front of her, blade in hand. His voice was steady, filled with iron. "If you want them, you go through me." The soldiers laughed. A human? Alone? But he was not afraid. He spread his stance, eyes sharp. He had faced beasts, fire, and death. He would face this too. The soldiers advanced. The first one lunged, swinging his rifle like a club. The human ducked and slashed his blade across the soldier's leg. Sparks flew as metal scraped. The soldier staggered, falling to the ground. Another soldier fired. The human dove behind a tree, the shot cracking the bark. He rolled and came up swinging, driving his blade into the gaps of the armor. The soldier cried out and collapsed. The widow screamed as two more soldiers broke past him, rushing toward her. She raised her glowing hand, weak energy bursting outward, like a shield. It slowed them for a moment, but not enough. The human charged, rage burning in his chest. He tackled one soldier to the ground, smashing his helmet against a rock until it cracked. The second soldier swung his rifle, hitting him across the back. Pain shot through his body, but he didn't fall. He grabbed the rifle and yanked it free, slamming the soldier into a tree. Breathing hard, blood running down his arm, he turned back to the widow. She held her baby tight, eyes wide with terror. "More!" she cried, pointing, and she was right. More soldiers poured into the clearing, their lights surrounding them. The human knew he couldn't fight them all. His blade was nearly broken, his body nearly done, but he also knew he couldn't stop. He raised the rifle he had taken and fired wildly, forcing the soldiers back. The shots echoed through the night. He wasn't trained, but desperation gave him strength. Each shot bought another second, another breath, another chance for the widow and her child. The soldiers regrouped, their leader shouting orders. "Kill the human! Take the child alive!" The widow cried out, clutching the baby as tears streamed down her face. She looked at the human, her voice breaking. "Please, save him." He looked back, his chest heavy, his eyes burning. "I will." Then he turned, standing tall, his weapon raised, his body a shield. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. Bullets tore the trees. Flames from the broken fire licked higher. The widow huddled against the rock, whispering to her baby, her voice trembling with love and sorrow. The human moved like a storm, striking, firing, pushing back every soldier that came near. He bled, he staggered, but he never stopped. Finally, the soldiers hesitated. Too many of them had fallen. Too many had been beaten by a single man who refused to break. The leader snarled, raising his weapon to fire one last shot. But the human was faster. He threw his broken blade with all his strength. It struck the leader's chest, sliding between the armor plates. The man collapsed, gasping. The other soldiers froze. Without their leader, they faltered. One by one, they backed away into the forest, dragging their wounded with them. Soon the clearing was empty except for the three who remained. The human dropped the rifle, his chest heaving. His body shook, every muscle burning. He staggered toward the widow and collapsed to his knees. She reached out with trembling hands, pressing her glowing palm to his wounds. Her voice was soft, broken. "Don't die." He smiled weakly, his vision fading. "I told you. I stay." The baby touched his face with its tiny hand, glowing faintly. The warmth spread through him, easing the pain, giving him strength to breathe again. The widow wept, holding both her child and the man who had saved them. In that moment, under the fading stars, they were no longer strangers. They were a family. The forest was quiet again. The soldiers were gone, the beasts kept their distance, and for the first time since the crash, hope filled the air. The human looked at them, mother and child, and whispered with the last of his strength, "No one will ever take you." The widow nodded, her tears shining like jewels. She whispered back the only word she needed to say, family. And as the sun rose over the broken forest, a new story began. The story of a human, an alien widow and her child, bound not by blood, but by choice. A choice that would one day change the galaxy.